And I must say a big thank you to Dr. Sarita Malik and her team for working so hard to bring this fascinating conference to our institution.
First of all, welcome, and it's lovely that we've had such a fantastic response to the conference, which is of course part of this AHRC funded project. And we have such a range of exciting speakers over the next couple of days, so we're all really looking forward to it, and thank you very much for your participation. So already we're coming to this question of community filmmaking, cultural diversity, from a range of disciplines and perspectives and areas of expertise, and different ways of thinking about community filmmaking. So that's the first thing that I want to say. And the project itself has been concerned with looking at how community filmmaking practices in culturally diverse contexts contribute to the wider film ecology and to questions of representation, identity and innovation, and how this contribution can be better supported by policy. And as I mentioned, the BFI have also supported this project, and really for them, they said that they're especially pleased to be involved in this project because it will enrich their knowledge in this area. So I think it's very significant that we're holding this conference here today at the British Film Institute.
I feel like it's been really inspiring to see so many different people talking about such a wide range of work that they're doing. It's kind of hard to keep up with all of the good stuff that people are doing.
The ideas, the thoughts that are taken from the United Nations Creative Economy Report 2013 that's just appeared, I hope they're not just relevant, but provide a useful sort of framing for a broader framing for the discussions that you're going to have over the next 2 days. But two things about it have struck me as being very familiar. One is that it is a significantly growing subsector, if you like, everywhere in the world. And the other one is that the interface between community filmmaking practice and the purposes of cultural diversity that this research project has set out to tackle are the very same issues that confront all the actors of the creative economy today, whether they operate in the post-industrial north, in this part of the world, or whether they're operating in the rapidly changing countries of the global south. And these issues include, Sarita has mentioned them, representation and identity, the tensions between art and commerce, knowledge and innovation dynamics, and the roles of intermediaries, the role of policy, the role of place. And obviously community filmmaking is also a part of what's referred to today as the creative economy, and I'll say that in both objective and subjective terms. Objective because it is creative, productive practice, obviously. Subjective because the creative economy has become a buzzword, and even if many of us don't really feel that what we're doing really fits in with all the hyped up parameters of the creative economy, it suits us to be included in the greater creative economy because it's a sector that's moving ahead.
I thought they put it quite nicely in the conclusion when they said about how it's allowing voices that don't usually get heard. It's about giving those people a voice, and that's certainly what we try and do in the work that I'm involved with Bristol Radical Film Festival. But it's really nice to be here and to be in a community of other people doing progressive work in film culture broadly.
Firstly, and briefly, a kind of critique of some of the euphoria that surrounds discussion of people's growing access to media technologies. The idea that somehow, the masses are taking charge of the means of production, that this is a big challenge to dominant media, to big media, that we're seeing a kind of revolution in access to media. And I want to suggest that actually what is happening is rather less spectacular, rather less of a revolutionary shift, perhaps rather more mundane, rather more banal than some of the people who tend to celebrate these developments are inclined to suggest. Now, that doesn't mean that I want to dismiss it. I mean, the other part of what I want to do is to offer what I've called here a defence of banality, a defence of the mundane, that the argument that practices like amateur video making, everyday domestic media making actually need to be taken seriously. These things are not necessarily cool or glamorous. They're not necessarily subversive or empowering. They're not necessarily challenging dominant relations of power. But it's precisely these kinds of everyday uses of media that people in cultural studies, media studies certainly, have tended to ignore. So I want to argue that we need to take these things seriously, not romanticize them or mythologize them and get overexcited about them, but just look a lot more closely at what is going on.
Basically, what is community filmmaking? Is it always with the community, or is it just about community? And I think I needed actually to address some of those issues. And it's been great, the kind of buzz talking to other people working in this area. It's actually not something I've experienced before, and I think there's a lack of attention given to community filmmaking. I think it's quite low status. I don't know why. Maybe because there's quite a lot of women involved.
Any type of variety, pop your hands in the air. Fabulous, thank you, that's quite a few people. Put your hands up in the air if you're an academic, researcher or educator or... Oh, brilliant, okay, excellent. And put your hands up if you work at a venue or a film centre or a cinema or anywhere like that. Brilliant, and put your hands up if it's other. I don't know what the other might be. We've got a few others. Curators, archivists, fantastic, great. Oh, and so I'll come around and find out what you will get up to later on. As Kelly said, I'm a filmmaker. And I don't kind of call myself a community filmmaker, but that is what I do. I'm a community, participatory, educator. I've done corporate videos. Awkward. Broadcast, independent films, all sorts of different filmmaking. I've sort of done it over my 15-year career. And Lighthouse as a venue have been integral to that.
So one aspect of that is, and it's particularly true in this country, that funding is about control. So if you come with a viewpoint that is different to the one of the funders, they won't fund you, which I have to say I have first-hand experience in. So it's difficult to get funding for what you really want to do, and I don't want to do anything just to get funding. So that's always the dilemma, if you like.
So it's been really fantastic to be here today and about this community filmmaking conference, because it's really a topic which is under research and overlooked, and I think gathering all those people from across Europe, Canada and United States to talk about community filmmaking really help us understand better the significance of community filmmaking in terms of generating authentic stories and new stories about people who are actually unheard of across England and the world.
I'll be talking about how the driving rationale for many projects is not defined by the people who want to run the projects and make the work, but is defined by the funding agency. And most crucially within this, how the stories, the content of the media that people want, that people are making, is lost. So the thing is that we're working for people who are ultimately more concerned with how people make media rather than what they actually say. I'm quite specifically talking not about the very amateur projects that were mentioned earlier, but in the top half of the table that David Buckingham was talking about. I'm talking about community, professional, semi-professional filmmakers, and those that are activists, those that want to change the world in one way or another. Inclusion Through Media, a project that ran between 2004 and 2007. We had it was the largest ESF-funded project of its type in Europe, and we had some 25 different, what they called action research lines. We were delivered by 37 partners.
I think the really great value, of course, of the conference is enabling those dialogues and getting those people to talk to each other. So I was surprised by how many people were sort of empowered to see some of the issues raised, the experience in their daily life or in their daily work. Some of the people who were doing research, and they found out that the research they were doing was relevant to some filmmakers or some policymakers. So it's really that exchange and that making each other's work more valuable and relevant really in the sector.
So I was really interested to see and to hear about other experiences of community filmmaking. I've noticed here that they've been mainly around structures and organizations that are actually set up for to receive funding and to conduct ongoing projects around filmmaking. But it's been very useful to hear how they've analysed what they've been doing, and a lot of it is relevant and does resonate with what I've been doing.
I feel really honored that we managed to host this conference, the Brunel Conference, because it's such an important part of our work. We try really hard to support various communities. I think it's especially important if you work in UK and especially a city like London, because it's such a cosmopolitan city. You have so many cultures and so many communities mixing together, but I don't think you really see a lot of that work coming across. So hosting a conference when you actually see a lot of communities working towards an actual outcome of what the conference presented, it's a really great piece of work and really great energy that we could witness today in that conference.
I'm really pleased with the way the conference has gone. We've had such a range of diverse people coming to speak, and also as delegates as well. So we've got this fantastic buzzy atmosphere happening now in the Blue Room, where people are talking about community filmmaking, talking about their involvement within culturally diverse contexts, and the day couldn't have gone better.
For me, community filmmaking doesn't get the sort of platform that it deserves, and it's absolutely thriving in the UK at the moment. And I think that's one of the reasons why this conference is so important, is because it actually does give that platform to all of the different groups and educators and filmmakers and facilitators that are working in community filmmaking, because predominantly this really thriving film culture is broadly, it's excluded from mainstream film culture, and actually it's kicking off and it's really happening, and this seems to be the place where those involved can talk about what they do and finally get that platform to share the work that they're doing. So more power to you for putting it on, basically.